Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Follow Your Passion. Let me introduce my guest of today. Her name is Andrea Trank. She's the founder of Heaven Lane Healing and Creative Arts. Andrea is an integrative medicine and health coach, yoga teacher, former college science professor, and jewelry designer. Her background is as eclectic as her jewelry designs. She has 3 advanced degrees from the University of Virginia in communications, science, and education. She was a radio and TV news reporter, a PR consultant, a college and high school science instructor, and now a certified integrative medicine health coach and yoga teacher. Her passion has always been clean living, the health of the planet, beauty, and overall wellness. Now she combines everything into her own business, Heaven Lane Healing and Creative Arts. Welcome, Andrea. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing great, and thank you for that lovely introduction, Erwin.
You're welcome. You're welcome. As I understand it correctly, Heaven Lane Healing and Creative Arts, it started out as just Heaven Lane Creative Arts. Is that correct?
Yes, my first business incarnation was Heaven Lane Creations, and my website still is called Heaven Lane Creations because it's just too complicated to change that. But I live on Heaven Lane, and I was creating jewelry at that time, which was part of my healing process from some of the illnesses that I went through.
Nice. Isn't it amazing that you're living on Heaven Lane?
I think it's pretty amazing. I'm not planning to move.
No, I can imagine that. So, take me through the healing part. When did the healing come into your business?
Well, I've been on a healing journey my whole life because I had a lot of unexplained illnesses that when I went to a traditional doctor, they of course wanted to just prescribe anti-anxieties or antidepressive medicines. And my saving grace was I was very sensitive to all medicines. So I chose not to take the medicines because I was more afraid of the side effects than the benefits of the medicine. So that caused me to start seeking more holistic ways to heal. And really the first thing I discovered was making jewelry because it was a very meditative art for me. And when I sat making jewelry, my anxiety lowered. I got myself into this just this place of peace and calmness. And then I started making beautiful things and I wasn't planning to sell them. People just like, oh, can you make me a pair? And they'd see something. I mean, I literally was at a location. Somebody saw the jewelry I was wearing, asked where I got it. I said I made it. And they said, could I buy it off you? And I literally took the piece off me and sold it to the person right there and then. So that was the kind of stuff that was happening to me. I really hadn't planned to make that a business. I was still a school teacher at that time.
Nice. But creating jewelry it's very creative, right? You have to create something out of nothing.
Yes, and it's very interesting. I think healing is a very creative process too. And so the jewelry design process allowed me to both use my scientific side of my mind and my artistic side, and then to really go deep into my heart and just let things emerge. And in everything I've done since then, all the trainings I've gone through, and there are far too many to list, have all been about taking what I'm learning, the scientific part of it, and then creatively applying it first to my own life and now to the lives of the clients and the students that I serve. And so there's been a thread throughout this whole thing.
Nice. And I can totally relate to that because I used to call myself a left brainer. You know, I'm a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering. And since I became a hypnotherapist and a coach, I'm more opening the right side of my brain, so to speak. So I consider myself to be more balanced nowadays. So exactly. I can totally, my greatest love was optimizing processes. And I still do that, you know, but very complex ones, those of the internal human being. And it certainly needs a certain level of creativity to do that, because every person is unique, has its own problems, challenges, its own solutions of getting there. And as a coach or therapist, it's your duty, so to speak, to find that creative solution that will help that particular client.
Well, and I think the creative solution requires more of an open mind and not coming in just with a template or a standard which you're going to apply to each individual person. So
Yeah.
everyone, like you said, everyone is unique. And therefore, when I'm talking to somebody or when I'm dealing with some of my own issues, maybe the standardized recommendation is not right for me, but I have to be open to that and then be curious and creative. And you can't be curious if you're afraid of what you have. And I think this is one of the biggest lessons I've learned, that curiosity and creativity are really on the side of love and healing, and that fear and the fear and doing dogmatic and all these kind of like, you have to do it this way and you have to just take that pill that the doctor has offered or you're not going to heal. And people become so disempowered by that and also get really afraid. And fear, in my opinion, is the biggest deterrent to healing of all the deterrents.
Yeah, I can only agree with you on that. So beautiful said. So how did you, because you're also very, how do I say that? You're trained, so to speak, you know, you're educated. That was actually the word I was looking for, in communication, science, and education. What skills are you still using in your current practice?
Well, that's a great question. I really feel that every previous career and previous incarnation of myself has led me to become better at what I'm doing today. So the ability to interpret complicated things is what I got from being a scientist and a science teacher, because oftentimes that's what disempowers people. It's like they're reading this and they're going, I don't know what this person's talking about. I don't know what the doctor's saying. I can't interpret this picture of what's going on inside myself. I don't even know what's in these medicines or supplements. I don't know what's in my food.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's, number one. So as a scientist, I can read carefully and critically, and I know how to research, and I understand a lot of things. And then communication, I have to be able to communicate in a way that people understand what I'm explaining, because I think that's often what happens. They go in and they just want to be told what to do because they don't really understand the process of healing. And so my job is to keep them as a client as short a time as possible by empowering their own understanding of the healing process, by teaching them how to interpret their signs and their symptoms, and do so with curiosity, compassion, and not with that fear that enters into a lot of this when we get a diagnosis. I mean, I got a diagnosis when I was 32 years old of gastroparesis. All right, just break down those two words. Gastroparesis, stomach paralysis. Now, if you want to talk about a scary diagnosis, that was pretty darn frightening. And when I did not understand how to heal, I was really afraid. I thought I was going to be on feeding tubes. And that was going to be my life, because a stomach paralysis means your stomach's not working.
Yeah.
And so I had to really educate myself. I had to be curious and open and go through a whole healing process. And then I had to learn how to communicate. So when somebody comes to me with a scary sounding diagnosis, my first thing that I do is, you're not your diagnosis, and let's break this down and let's figure out what this means. And And there are ways to heal from literally everything.
Yeah, nice, nice. And I know you also use a very how do I say that? Technique probably doesn't do good at your at what I'm meaning, but you use a very a specific methodology to help your clients. You know, you call it hard math.
Yeah, heart
So
math is
could you
not mine. It's an internationally known 30-year system of healing. And the heart math tools have over, and the reason I like them so much is they have over 400 studies that have been conducted on their efficacy. So the heart math tools are all about regulating your nervous system and getting your heart and brain to start syncing up. And let me explain this way. So oftentimes during a normal day, people are going fast, slow, fast, slow. It's like having a foot on a accelerator and on a brake, fast, slow. And their system inside, and we can look at this through a biofeedback device, looks a lot like an earthquake Richter scale kind of thing. It's jaggedy, it's not smooth, which means our heart rate is going up, and then it's got to come down, and then it's going up, and then it's got to come down. And this affects our ability to think. This affects our blood pressure. This affects the release of our hormones. It affects our nervous system. So all these systems are working against each other when we can't get our heart rate variability and our brain to start syncing up. And so heart math is a system of tools based both on breathing and based on activating what we call uplifting emotions to entrain our rhythms of our heart with our brain waves, our nervous system, our blood pressure, our endocrine system, and our hormone system. And so it is a physiological process that has amazing benefits, because what it does is it creates a new baseline inside your body. And when you have a new baseline inside your body, then you are less like anxious, depressed, overwhelmed, stressed, and all those things, as we know, play into modern day illnesses. I mean, it's the biggest factor in modern day illnesses. Our genetics is less than 10%. You know, a lot of it is lifestyle and stress.
Yeah, of course. So would I do honors to the system to summarize it as the heart math methodology is aligning the brain and heart so that you're more balanced as a human being?
Yeah, that's a very, it's a simple way to say it. I would say the heart first, and I'll tell you why. Because the heart sends, believe it or not, more signals up to the brain than the brain sends down to the heart through something called your vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve, there's a lot of research these days on how the vagus nerve is controlling so many of what are known as our autonomic processes. So those are the things that can go on their own, but we can actually also make them more efficient. And so the heart, and in our normal lives, we forget to focus our breathing and our attention on our heart. We're very head-centered. So when we're head-centered, we might be in the part of the brain, which is the reactive part of the brain. And when you start syncing your heart up to the brain, all of a sudden you're syncing it up to the higher thinking part of the brain, and it's called cortical facilitation. When we're not synced up, which is most of us most days, unless we are practitioners of some of these techniques and tools, and yoga does a lot of the same things too, and meditation, and taking walks in nature and a lot of other practices. But I liked this practice because it was modern and it was science-based, even though it was based on the old traditions, because a lot of times people are reluctant to try a 3,000-year-old tool, but they're more interested in trying a tool that we have a lot of scientific research studies on.
Yeah, definitely.
But the fact is, the heart, so we put the heart first. The heart is communicating to the brain. When it syncs up with the brain, it does shift what part of the brain that you're using. Rather than the amygdala, it's going now through the thalamus, which is now sending out signals to your cortex. And so now we're getting the middle brain involved, the smarter brain instead of our more primitive frontal brain.
Yeah, nice. I'm now 7 years entrepreneur, focusing on the mindset and stuff like that. And before I met you, I never heard of the heart methodology, but it sounds great, and it's what you say. If you're comparing like Western medicine against Eastern medicine, the Western medicine is maybe about 150 years old, I guess, something like that. And they call it the proven medicine, while the Eastern medicine, that's like 2-3 centuries old.
More than that, 5,000 years old, 10,000 years old.
And they call it alternative because they can't prove the working of it, right?
Right. Well, and it's
like acupuncture, right? They don't know how it works, so it's alternative medicine. Says a medicine world that's only been around for like 150 years.
And yes, I do see the irony in that as well, Erwin. But I think a lot of it is a misunderstanding of the branches of science. The branch of science that most of modern medicine is based on is experimentation, written down experimentation, very controlled experiments. The people 5,000 years ago were also using science. They were using observation. They were also experimenting on themselves. They may not have had pharmaceuticals. They may not have had modern microscopes and things like that, but they were conducting experiments, and they were using probably the biggest way that we learn science, which is observation. Inquiry and observation. You get curious about something and then you observe. And really, those are the basis of science, As a science teacher, that's what I taught my kids.
Yeah, wonderful. And it's beautiful that you can explain something that people find it hard to understand in layman terms. So, by using metaphors, stuff like that the average person can understand it as well. And that's what you said, you're actually trying to make yourself obsolete so that your clients are able to heal themselves more or less. Exactly. And that's beautiful.
Yep. I'm first and foremost an educator, which is interesting being in an entrepreneurial position. And I don't know if you were going to go this way, but you and I talked a little bit about probably my biggest problem coming from the education field into now owning my own business was getting over this thing about money. As educators, we never thought about money, right? Teachers don't get into teaching to earn a living. They get into teaching because they have a passion for children or a passion for their subject.
Yeah.
And so I had a big money block at first. And that was probably my biggest challenge in being successful, Erwin, was getting over that money block.
Oh, definitely. I had a lot of fellow entrepreneurs as well and clients that they have a hard time asking the right price for the services, because people might think that who's going to pay me that much amount of money, right? And I told them that it's not about you. They're not paying for you. They're paying for the result that they're getting by working with you. and what's it worth to them, right? And as an example, I say, if you're going to have a good massage for an hour, you're paying like $50-$60, right? And you might benefit from that for a week, or at the most. If you go out for dinner with your spouse, you're spending $50 to $100 easily. If you're buying a brand jeans, it only starts at $100. And you have the skills and tools to help somebody releasing a problem or a challenge that they've been living with for maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years, who knows how long, right? What's it worth to them?
Right.
And that's actually what they're more than willing to pay for.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. And I think, when you're in this so-called, I don't want to call myself being in a spiritual business, but it's a heart business, right? And oftentimes you feel like money is the opposite of being heart-centered. And so I had to, I read a few books that really helped me. One of them was called The Soul of Money. And The Soul of Money by a woman named Lynn Twist. And she really helped me understand that money is just energy being exchanged too.
Yep.
And the exchange for my value and my heartfelt gifts and all the things that I'm offering is of a great value. And that when I put out the energy of not being worth it, then I'm going to attract the wrong kind of clients. And I did that at the beginning. Like, I attracted clients I couldn't heal at the beginning because I wasn't putting out the right energy to draw the people in that valued what I was offering for me. And it was just fascinating. It really, I couldn't say step by step exactly how it went, but I can tell you that there was a huge shift, and I did several things, but the biggest thing is really believing in what I had to offer.
Definitely.
And, and that just changed everything.
Would you like to hear a funny story?
Sure.
My mentor, he asked a fellow student once, and it was all about hypnotherapy, right? And he asked this fellow student, if you're giving your friends or family a session, right? Do you charge money for that? And he immediately said, no, of course not. They're my friends or family. Why would I charge them for something I can give them, right? And then he asked him, can you remember this wonderful feeling when you've given a session to your client, and their life has been transformed, that they're blessed, they're happy, Can you imagine this joyous feeling, or like a victory feeling that you feel at that very moment, right? And he lightened up and he said, oh yes, it's the best feeling ever. And then he asked him, why are you denying your friends and family that same feeling? And he was shocked, he said, what do you mean? He said, well, this great euphoric feeling that you're experiencing once you had this great session with your client, the moment they're able to return something to you, like giving money, they get a similar feeling, right? And you're denying that. So you're denying them that feeling. You're creating an IOU that they're unable to fulfill. Really
interesting perspective.
Yeah,
I love
that. Made him think, and it's if you look at it, it's true. You're giving something, but you're not accepting a gift in return. And it doesn't always have to be money, right? It can also be another service. I could help you, and you could help me with your expertise. But denying something to give in return, you're actually doing them a disservice. And it's very interesting point of view to look at it that way.
I like that. I really do like that. I really, I'm going to have to even process that more, because I think I hadn't thought of it that way. But I still don't think I can charge my husband.
No, but you know, he can return the favor with so many other things, right?
Like doing the dishes.
Exactly, you know, cleaning the house. Who knows what he can what all he can do. But it's about I would say almost say reciprocity, right? Returning the favor. And that's money is, it's never the goal, but it's the result of the value you add, right? And it's just it's a tool for exchanging, right?
Exactly. And it is a form of energy. And those of us who are contributing to the world, we should draw more of that energy toward us, because we're giving so much to the world. So it's, you know, just uplifting the entire world.
Yeah. Just a funny story that I remember from one of the persons I worked with, that she was a therapist herself, and she dealt with somehow she came across a lot of entities that traveled with her clients, and she didn't like working with that at the beginning, because it was very heavy to work with that. And then suddenly she changed her mindset, and she just said to herself, you know, if I am to work with entities, they better come with clients that can pay my services.
You know, when you were talking about this, the other thing that I just thought of, which is a heart math-based principle, is when we are in our heads, then we will start thinking about all the negative things about it. The minute we shift to our heart, what would the heart say about this? The heart said that if I put myself out and do this work and do it well and put this energy out, and I get paid well, then I'm in a good place. And so anything that we can shift from, you know, the head, just a pure head decision, to a heart syncing up with the head, is going to be a better decision, and you're just going to feel better about it. And when you feel better and happier, your health is going to be better. It's such a simple equation.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I totally agree with you on that. There's this saying that we actually got 3 brains, right? You got your heart brain, your human brain, like a head brain, and you got your gut brain. And it should be like your heart brain is what drives you. It's your passion, your purpose, right? Your gut brain is telling you which direction to go, and your head brain should think of the strategies to achieve it.
Well, let me tell you, I love that. And I'm going to give you a little interesting science that was done on this from the Heart Math Institute. So they actually wanted to see which brain comes on first. And so they hooked up these interesting monitors to the heart, to the head, little monitors on the head. And then the gut brain would be more like, you know, you're feeling it on your skin, you know, because that's when you're reacting.
Yeah.
And then they showed people either very happy or very violent images. And there was a pause in between each. And what they were measuring was which one responded first and how correctly did it respond in advance of seeing the image. And the evidence is the heart knew whether it was going to be a scary or a happy image first. The message then went to the brain, and then from the brain went to the rest of the body. And so the heart's intuition is real. It, you know, the heart has about 40,000 neurons in it, but these neurons are very tuned in to what is going on in the world. And so if we trust our heart's intuition first, allow it to communicate to the brain, and then the brain to communicate to the rest of the body, our gut instincts would probably be better. If we go right to the gut, then oftentimes we're doing that out of fear.
Yeah.
And if we go to the brain has a lot of mechanisms in there that are designed for safety because they have such strong memories of past traumas. And so the brain is automatically the one that says no. No, that might be scary because maybe something in your past, something you don't even remember, is stored there. And so if we start breathing into our heart, activating our heart's brain first, it's going to inform the brain, which is going to inform the gut brain and the body brain. So that comes from HeartMath research.
Yeah, nice. And it also makes me think of, I always say that people are limiting themselves without realizing it. And it's our head brain or brain that separates us from other mammals, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're also limiting us in our skills. Because if you can remember, like years ago when we had this great flood in Indonesia, right? A lot of people died over there. But if you look at how many wild animals died in that same flood, they're very, very little. Almost no animals died. And it's my belief that because they don't have this brain that's limiting them, you know, they're more in tune with nature, that they already felt this flood coming up and fled the scene before it happened. And I can imagine that our human brain is limiting us from getting this connection with nature and picking up on all those kind of signals.
Well, there are some very interesting research studies the HeartMath Institute has done on connection with nature. An older study, which is still going on, is the actual, when we get ourselves into what's called a coherent state, that our heart puts out the exact same wavelength as the Earth's major wavelength at 0.1 hertz.
Wow.
And so it lines up, and they have put magnometers around the world that are taking measurements, and they're doing experiments. So they're having a lot of people get into HeartMath tools at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's called the Global Coherence Initiative or Global Pulse. And so they do it all at the same time, and then they take readings at these magnometers around the world. Now, on the other hand, when a horrible event happens, like 911 or mm-hmm. something, they took readings at these magnometers, and the Earth pulse was incoherent too. So whether or not, because the Earth pulse was incoherent, people became incoherent, or the incoherence of what was going on affected the Earth. So there's definitely a connection there. And now they've just started a research project on trees, that they're actually taking coherence measurements of trees, and then people who are buying these instruments are hooking it around their trees. They're practicing different tools and techniques, and then reading the electromagnetic fields that the trees are putting out and seeing if they're changing based on the people doing some heart-focused breathing and other things. So they're very much into the science of all this, which is just so intriguing to me. Besides the absolute great effects it's had on my nervous system and my healing and my clients' healing, I love the futurist science part of it on, you know, adding to the healing of our planet and why it's important to care about our planet as well. So
yeah, nice. Well, you already touched a little bit on it, but could you share some success stories from your clients that you truly transformed or helped using those methods you're using?
Well, I like to use myself first because I will tell you that I did everything to heal my gut issues, my anxiety, and my autoimmune disease. I changed out my water system. I got rid of all plastic use. I stopped using aluminum foil. I only used special pans that were safer. I changed all my food sources to organic. I didn't go out to restaurants. I did yoga every day. I slept every day. And I mean, I could just go on and on. I changed out my cleaning products. I stopped coloring my hair. I stopped wearing nail polish. So I did all of these things and I still wasn't healed. And then I realized the reason I wasn't healed is my heart and brain were not in a healing state and my nervous system wasn't in a healing state. So that was the missing component. So the heart math practices put me over the edge of healing. And many people who know me know that it's not until I added heart math to my toolbox that I, really started reversing a lot of the signs and the symptoms of the various things I was suffering from. So
Nice.
what happened to me now when I deal with clients, I don't start with change your diet, change this, change that, because number one, that puts them into a more anxiety-ridden state or a fearful state. I start with teaching them the heart math practices so that they can learn to re-regulate their nervous system and get calmer. And then when they're ready, then I say, okay, let's look at what you're eating. And when you get into your heart, does this feel like the food that you're eating is supporting your health? And then they start being more open to making these changes because their heart and their brain are aligned instead of being so afraid that these changes are going to wreck their life or poor, pitiful me, or I'm being deprived. So it's a completely different way of approaching healing to get your heart and your brain aligned and your nervous system back regulated. And then all these decisions become things of, I'm curious, will this help me? And if it doesn't, okay, I'll try something else instead of, I can't heal, something worse is happening to me.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And also, if you're, let's for instance take it as an example, that changing your diet, right? And you are changing your diet and you're are not seeing the results you're expecting from that, you might still be afraid that you did something wrong, or it's not working
Or
for you, or you're the
exactly,
or you're the exception on the rule. So why is it happening to me? Why am I not healing? Stuff like that. And that's indeed what you're saying. It's fear-based.
Exactly. By the time people have come to me, they've been through so many different doctors, so many different plans, they're already in overwhelm. And the last thing I want to do is pile on another suggestion. So I'm not even going to make a suggestion to them until I see where they are, how they feel, what's the emotional landscape? What's the nervous system landscape? What do they, how are they thinking about all of this and changing their mindset and everything? So it's really a very different approach to healing.
Yeah, and I love it. Yeah, it's the same with hypnotherapy as well, that you go to the root cause of the issue. You're not dealing with the coping mechanisms, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, beautiful. So do you also have some funny stories you could share from your clients?
Funny stories from my clients. Well, I try to, I have to think about this. Again, the people who come to me are really at wit's end. So I'm not, I'll give you a funny story of a client that I failed with early in my career. She came to me and I tried helping her clean up her diet and do things like that because she wasn't feeling healthy and she wanted to get thin, to get married and da-da-da-da-da. And about 6 months now, 6 months into working with me, she said, I want my money back. And I said, why? She said, because I'm not following any of your advice. I was like, okay. Like, so I was like, okay, all I can do is lead the horse to water. I can't make anybody drink. And that was a huge learning experience for me, because I realized that's why I wasn't going to lay on advice until I really got them to get in touch with why they're doing this. Do I really want this? And obviously she didn't really want it at that time. You know? It's like,
and it's actually it's both a funny story, but a great learning as well, you know. And we've all been through those situations, you know, especially when you're starting. And
yes.
it's actually, well, I'm not doing anything what you're saying, so I want my money back.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
And then I remember another one, and this is another thing I learned, is like when somebody else hired me for like their husband, their wife, their child, it's like, that is always a mistake. It's like they're paying for me and they're like, well, the person has to want your help. And, you know, so this idea that the teacher will appear when the student's ready. So you can't force anybody. And so I really spend time at the beginning saying, you know, if your heart is into this, I can help you. I really can.
Yeah.
But you have to decide, you know, what you're willing to do. And I'm going to hold your hand along the way. And I'm going to, and you're going to fall. That's the thing, is we're all going to fall. And for people not to feel like failures, I tell them a lot of my quote unquote failure stories, so they understand this is not about failing. There is an absolute wonderful lesson in every road we go down that may not be the right path. So
yeah, exactly. And it's the same. My wife, she focused on helping children, right? And she had a lot of parents. Most of them actually were women, you know, bringing the child, saying that the child needed help. And my wife could already see that the child wasn't really the problem, right? 9 out of 10 times it was the mother that had a problem, but she didn't want to work on it because it was the child that was the problem.
yeah.
And and nowadays I also work sometimes with teenagers, you know, and they come to me. The first thing that I never want the parent to be with the child when I'm doing a session with them, but as soon as I'm with the teenager themselves, I always say to them, you know, I did get some information from your mother or your father, but I'm here for you, right? What do you want? What do you think the challenge is that brought you to me? And what is it that you want to get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're telling it from themselves, and then I know if I can help them or not, right?
Right.
But I never say, you know, your mother said this, so we're going to work on this. And I always said, your mother gave me some information, but I want to know what you think the issue is, or that I can help you with. Mm-hmm. And that's what you say, you know. I sometimes get the question from people that are, you know, can everybody be hypnotized? And I say, yes, as long as they want to change themselves. You can't force anybody in hypnosis, you know. The client should have the desire to want this transformation. And that's exactly the same like you know. If you would work for a company and the company sending his employees to work with you to become healthy, that won't work unless the employee wants the change themselves.
Well, that's an interesting point you make, because I am now working a great deal with school systems. And oftentimes when you first approach these teachers, the burned out teachers, they're burned out, they say, because the kids are so misbehaved in the classroom. And so they want you to help them, you know, control the behaviors of the students. Mm-hmm. And it's hard, but very important for them to learn that it's their own state that is going to affect the climate of the classroom. And their own state is what's causing their illness. And so I have to take a very gentle approach, but I have to let them know that we're going to work on you, you know, and we're going to get you to feeling better, because the kids are just reading off your energy anyway. And they're reading off the way you react rather than respond. And so anything that goes on out there, if you learn to regulate yourself inside, you can shift your perspective on it. You can handle it better, have fewer health effects from what's going on outside, and then create an easier situation in your classroom that will bring the students along. Like I said, Erwin, remember when I said that the heart brings the brain and the nervous system, it entrains it?
Yeah.
Well, our coherence will entrain the coherence of the people around us. So when we make that our priority, things for the most part are just going to improve around you. And that's been a big thing for me. As I improve myself, I am able to help others so much easier.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I use the pyramid of Bateson and Dilts a lot, you know, of all the logical levels of change. And at the bottom part is the environment, and then you got your behavior and skills and beliefs and values. And I always say, if you go bottom up, it can change the layer above, and top down, it will change by definition, right? And it's easy to say that the environment can change your behavior, but it's up to you how to decide how it will influence your behavior. But your behavior has a direct influence on your environment by definition.
Exactly, always. And the fact is, it's also keeps you from blaming and shaming, because blame and shame are very difficult emotions and things to work with when you're trying to improve yourself. They're deterrents to behavioral change. And so you can very easily blame your environment, or, you know, or if you feel shame about yourself. So you have to work on yourself to get out of shame and to not get into the pattern of blaming. And then it's a lot easier. So
yeah, wonderful. I'm afraid we can't talk hours on this subject, you know, because it's so interesting and inspiring. If you could share one tip or little piece of wisdom with the audience with regards to following your passion or entrepreneurship or whatever comes to mind, what would that be, Andrea?
Regarding to following your passion, I think it's worth taking the time to ask yourself every single day, instead of writing your to-do list, you write, what would make me happy today? And if you're not happy in your to-do list, then maybe you need to rewrite that to-do list, because we are so much more healthier, productive, effective, kind, compassionate, caring, productive people if we are happy. And so just make sure and spend the time. What would make me happy today? If what I'm doing is not making me happy, then I really shouldn't be doing it. So maybe it's time to rethink it.
Nice. Great tip. If people want to know more about you, Andrea, or get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, I live on Heaven Lane. So everything that is about my social media says something about Heaven Lane in it. There's probably not a lot of business people out there who have Heaven Lane. So it's Andrea at Heaven Lane. Facebook is Heaven Lane. Instagram is Heaven Lane. Although my YouTube channel is Andrea Trank, and I have a lot of free videos on there, videos on little practices on heart math. So if they would subscribe to me, and free yoga classes on there. I do teach yoga online a couple of days a week. It might be a little early. No, it wouldn't be early for people in your part of the world. It would be in the afternoon because I teach
Yeah.
in the morning. And I, run lots of fun workshops, but I have a lot of free things. And then find me Heaven Lane Creations on my website. So Heaven
Perfect.
Lane, Andrea and Heaven Lane.
Yeah, great combination, Andrea. Great. I loved our conversation. It's very inspiring, and very informative as well, and this heart math, I think it deserves more visibility to the world, because I truly think that it's an added service that could truly help a lot of people. So thanks again for being my guest in my show. We're connected, so we'll stay definitely in touch. And thanks again for being my guest, Andrea.
Well, thank you, Erwin. I really enjoyed our conversation. And I don't know if you remember this, but it was a challenge. The challenge was I had put out that I had the best interview, and you said you were going to better that interview. And I think you did today. So good
Thank
job
you.
on that.
Much appreciated.